Good afternoon. This is the Talking Devils podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined by a good friend of mine, esteemed Manchester United fan, Manchester United author, someone who's been around the block a long time, a man who I go to for advice, a man who I go to for anything really when I want to chat. Interviewed Roy for my latest book that's out next in a couple of months, Manchester United After Munich. Just an all-round fun of Manchester United knowledge, joined by Roy Cavanagh. Delighted. How are you doing, Roy? You all right?
I'm very good. I'm very good. And I'm glad to see you looking so well. Now we've got Ruby in the world who's making a big difference to your family. And congratulations,
Thank you,
everybody
mate.
who knows you.
Always smiling with that little one, even when she has her tantrums. So I had a conversation with Tony Whelan on the topic of the day, actually,
Yeah.
not too far away. Tony Whelan, I told him, she's just having a few tantrums, but she'll grow out of it. He says, yeah, maybe in about 50 years. He says,
Oh yeah.
speaking with
Oh yeah.
experience,
No, yeah.
so
About 38. About 38, 40 and something.
Um, we shall see. Anyway, so I've got you on today, Roy, to talk about a book that you've written with Dave Bushell, the Manchester United Academy Liaison Officer. There you go. If you're watching on the video, it's on the screen now. If you're listening back, he's holding up a copy of the book. Dave, one of these unsung heroes at United who does incredible work behind the scenes. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Roy, you've done so many books on United. You've written extensively on, Duncan Edwards before I did. You wrote a great biography of Dennis Violet. Other people, like when you've published independently, you've talked about Liam Whelan. About the what might have been all kinds of different books that you've turned your hand to. This is a little bit different, and I love
Mm.
stories like this because it really digs beneath the surface of what Manchester United is. So tell me first of all, what compelled you to work with Dave, and tell me about the journey that took you there.
Well, I got to know Dave. I knew of him obviously for years and years, but I got to know him about 2, 3 years ago. It was around the time of when I was um, told that I'd got cancer. And David asked me would I speak to the under 13s. And I actually put my cancer treatment back a week because I really wanted to go to Carrington and talk to the under 13s. That stream of under 13s, by the way, had Kai Rooney and this JJ Gabriel and a
Yeah,
couple of Michael Carrick's sons in the side. But you just listen to Dave, and it's like listening to you. I mean, if you weren't an author and someone met you and felt your feelings about everything, they would say, "Bloody hell, Wayne, there's a story in that in your life." Um, but it's very difficult writing somebody else's story for them. You've got to, um, well, of course, I am talking to the converted here. You've done it. I found it difficult because you have to have a rapport with them. You have to want to do it as well.
yeah,
You have to feel that person so that when they tell you something, you're going to put that in, but you've got you feel you've got that journalistic license to put a bit extra in, historically and whatever.
yeah,
And I said, you've got a book. Anyhow, it just went from there. And I've had 18 months and it's been a pure joy because I suppose I'm a bit like this. And you can't stop talking, and once Dave starts talking, you can't stop. So it's an honour to do, um, and he's so well regarded. I mean, we will talk about the stars who are at United. One quick early story. There was a picture of Dave in his house with Scott McTominay. And a young player called Callum Whelan, who's Scott McTominay's mate. And naughtily, I said, "Oh well, I'll just follow the picture and I'll put the picture in of you and Scott McTominay, spacing books and that." No, 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 no. I want Colin Whelan in, who's actually plays for Carlisle now, but was a United youth player, and it's all them stories of people who've made it with other clubs who think the world of it.
Yeah.
which I couldn't ignore.
No, I know I get where you're coming from with that. I remember when I worked with Brian Greenough, and it's a story I tell a lot of. Something that always struck me about Brian was he used to talk about the former player dinners, which you and I have been to. By the way, if you're listening or watching, if you can support the former players, do, because they're great. But yeah, what he told me about them was like he used to love going back, not because of like seeing the likes of Martin Buchan or anyone from the first team. It was more the players like the Drew Harris and the players who
Yeah,
even
yeah,
people listening and watching this will
yeah,
probably not even know who Drew Harris is.
yeah,
But players like that who he just not seen for years, and he loved them. Those are things for that, and I think that's where these kind of stories really resonate with me. And I think maybe so much over the last 5 or 6 years, where I've done so much more research into the sort of
mm,
cultural identity of the club,
mm,
how far that's gone. The people I've talked to, like Nick Cox and Tony Whelan, both associated, of course, with Dave,
mm,
and what they've got to say about it. And also, like I said, this forthcoming book where you're talking about the aftermath of Munich and the fact that the club, in a way, is built on it's built on the star names, but there's this undercurrent of caste who the club just wouldn't survive without. And it does go back. It goes back
mm,
earlier than. It goes back way, way earlier than the Busby Babes in Munich. It goes back, to the days of Louis Rocker climbing in to watch Newton
mm,
Heath and
mm,
wanting to support the club, and having the captain of the club take his dog to fundraise for survival, basically. All those kind of things, the unity and the cast there, and the number of unsung heroes. I mean, Walter Crickmer and Louis Rocker keeping the club going in the late 20s as a
yeah,
going concern. All these kind of things where names you don't normally hear about, or the stories that you don't normally put together, they're so crucial to the running of the club and the way that the club runs smoothly as well, and
yeah,
keeps aligned with its core identity. And it takes so much
mm,
work from people who understand it. And if you don't
mm,
have the understanding, those people don't stick around. And the fact that Dave's been around for such a long time in such an important role. So tell us about that role. Tell us about Dave. Tell us about his history and about his role, and why his story is so compelling to you.
mm. Well, Dave is a Bolton lad, first and foremost. And he lived in the town until towards the age of 30. Big Wanderers fan. Um, he heard the 1953 famous cup final on the radio, and he actually went to the 58 final at Wembley against United. Um, and then he got his Bolton schoolboys, ran Bolton schoolboys, and he sent a letter to Jimmy Armfield when Jimmy Armfield was managing Bolton Wanderers. And Jimmy Armfield, I mean, what a man he is, by the way. And there is a
Yeah,
proper football man, or he was. Sadly, he's passed away. Um, and Jimmy replied just with a flick of a coin. He just did it. Um, and he got him some scouting work. He got him some coaching work on a Tuesday and Thursday night. And Dave became part of the furniture, even learning a bit of physio and whatever. Um, so he was in manner really. He qualified as a school teacher in Bolton, and then an opportunity came up to go. Of course, Jimmy Armfield, Brian Clough's 44 days at Leeds took Jimmy Armfield to Leeds, and Ian Greaves, former United player, took over as manager at the Wanderers. But Dave then had a chance when he was about 30 to go to Hastings to a private school. And the headmaster's called David Chaplin, who, for all music aficionados out there, is the father of the group Keane. He's the father of the lead singer, uh, and whose son went to the school, and the drummer went to the school, etc., etc. Whilst down south, Dave took over the Sussex schoolboys like he'd done in Bolton, and that came an opportunity to become the manager of the England schoolboys side. And Dave finished up walking out of Wembley when the tunnel used to be behind the goals, like where he'd been watching in 1958, watching his famous Bolton play his now equally famous Manchester United in Dave's eyes, um, and yet walking out the same tunnel. Just imagine that. Um,
yeah,
meeting Beckenbauer in Munich, winning 4-0 in the Berlin Olympic Stadium. And he was there 5 years as the manager. And of course, under 15s, the captain, the team changed every year. But Ryan Wilson, as he was then, Giggsy, was his captain for one of the years. Lee Clark, the Newcastle
Yeah.
player, Alan Wright, the fullback.
Yeah.
And I had to ask him, why did David Beckham not play for England schoolboys? Andy Cole did. Ben Thornley, this is in Dave's time. Ben Thornley did. Jamie Redknapp did. And he said, well, the England schoolboys pick a squad from January to June of about 20, and that is the squad. But there's lots of trials and everything. And he was at Leighton Orient watching a trial, and the guy said to him, have you seen anything tonight, Dave? He said, the number 10 is a bit special. And it was Beckham. But he felt that Beckham, when he had the ball, was quite magnificent, absolutely, for a 14-year-old boy. But if he didn't have the ball, he wasn't necessarily as involved. And of course, the question also comes up, was he too small physically? And Dave disputes that because he felt the best young footballer he had was that left back called Alan Wright, who I think played for the Villa and Blackburn. And he was only a small, he said, but he was superb. He said, no, but you have to make a decision. And Dave Beckham didn't get into that 20. Interestingly, of course, the class of 92, and I followed their games, their early games, right through to the final that year with Crystal Palace. And Beckham only came into the side in the semi-final. Eric Harrison held him back to the semi-final. So, that was interesting. And from there, the story just carried on. Um,
Tell us about him rocking up at United then, because that was around 95.
yeah, but prior to that, in March 1991, England schoolboys and Scotland schoolboys were both staying at a hotel called the Bell House, just off the M40, Junction 2, at Beaconsfield. And they were playing at Wembley the day after. The same night, the United first team was staying there because they were playing Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, circa March 1991. 25,000 there, by the way, at Stamford Bridge, 55,000 at Wembley, watching England. And Dave's doing a team talk to the England boys, and Fergie came into the room. Hi, you're not going to beat the Scots lads, and excuse the bad accent, but him and Dave hit it off straight away.
Yeah.
And Fergie, as he would, logged it. A couple of years later, 92, 93, Fergie and Les Kershaw wanted to start an under 16s team, and they asked Dave, would he run it? And incredible, where now they take players on from the age of 6, 8.
Yeah.
United didn't have an under 16s team in 1993,
Right.
and Dave ran it for 2 years.
Interject on that just to make the point of how rare it was. I remember in the mid 90s, there was a lot of focus on Ajax, and I think it was around almost every FA Cup final. They used to do like a little feature because United played in a few of the FA Cup finals. I remember this quite well. They do the little feature with like 10 minutes, and they had a guy, there was a lad from England who went over and played for Ajax for a little while. He actually did a book a couple of years ago with Reach Sport. I forget his name. It doesn't come to my mind, but he was over there, and the point was that they were showing a lot of Ajax because what they were doing is what you're talking about. They'd already done it in place. They'd got an Ajax school. They'd got all this thing in place, and I think that was part of the English thing and the English element of trying to catch that up. And I think that this element of United history is really undersung because everyone talks about the class of 92 and it's like it stopped and it was waiting. There was no more development after that. But what they did after, particularly in terms of like bringing through players, is one thing because the numbers there and they speak for themselves. The likes of Danny Higginbotham and Danny Pugh, who went on to have great careers, and other players that you're about to speak about. But the infrastructure went back to this, didn't it? It was like, all right, this is how we're going to approach it. This is how we're going to have to sort of match these teams on the continent is this kind of
yeah.
approach, which is, like you said, under 16s teams and things like that.
His three players of that era, by the way, was Paul Heckingbottom, who's now manager at Preston, I think.
Yep,
He was with Sheffield United in the Premier League. He was his star player. Michael Clegg,
yep,
um, a guy called David Gardner, who, funnily enough, was Beckham's best, well, maybe still Beckham's best mate, and lived quite close to me here in Worsley. Um, so Dave was very influential then, and exactly what you said. And then look, something happened. There was a Paul McGuinness was moving up or whatever, and there was a vacancy coming at United, and Fergie offered him the job from January 1995 as youth development, and it wasn't really the coaching of the players, it was the paternal aspect of the players. Are they
yeah,
being looked after? Is the schooling all right, etc.? Any problems in life? And then about 97 it exploded because academies came in, which
yeah,
Fergie didn't want at first, but he said, I've got to do it. You were a school teacher, you do that. Les Kershaw, you were good with this, you do that. And that's how United Academy started. Um, and the incredible part of that of the academy um, was that United was sending the scholars to Accrington College, and there's a school called Ashton Mersey School. And by 1998, David realised, right, they were looking for some funds, and it still exists now. There's an actual block in the Ashton Mersey School, which is for Manchester United scholars. And from that, they were able to bring in players who lived outside Manchester and bring them in and let them have this schooling. So they have a different curriculum than what the Ashton on Mersey normal pupils will have.
yeah,
Um, and the list of players is quite incredible. So by 1995, Dave was getting to see the likes of Darren Fletcher, who was probably about 11 at the time, who was coming up on every school holiday. Johnny Evans, who came over with his father and Corey, his brother, and his mum, and United relocated them in Sale, I think, from Belfast, and they went to the Ashton on Mersey school, and so they had scholastic duties to do, but not Monday to Friday, 9 till 3. They did sort of 3 or 4 days, but then they would do coaching. And then Ferguson and Dave and others thought, well, we can bring others in younger uh, from the age of 10, 11 even,
yeah,
to come and live in Manchester. And a bit later on, I mean, Fletcher, for example, was coming up every holiday. And Dave, one Saturday morning, saw him at the cliff, and there was a game going on, the youth team versus the Possibles, and Darren Fletcher's kicking the ball against the wall, and Dave's going, "Why is he not playing?" Even though he might have been a year younger or something. And Darren Fletcher's dad was there, and he asked the same question: "What's going on, Dave?" He said, "Because last week Bobby Robson invited us all to St James's Park, and young Darren was took into the first team dressing room at 2 o'clock before the 3 o'clock kickoff." Dave immediately rang Fergie, who went phone away ballistic. Get him on the next flight next Saturday morning. Get him up here. Fletcher family. They always were going to come here, but when Bobby Robson, not it wasn't Sir Bobby, was showing such attitude. By the time they'd left Fergie's house, the contracts were signed, and Darren at 15, whatever. And Johnny Evans, things like Dave would do. Um, Johnny Evans was playing for Northern Ireland schoolboys in Aberdeen. And Dave drove all the way to Edinburgh Airport and picked up Jackie, his father, and his mother, who'd flown in from Belfast, and drove them up to Aberdeen so they could see him playing and everything. Little things like that, that attention to detail.
yeah,
Um, and later on, Welbeck, although he was a Manchester lad, he went to Ashton-on-Mersey School. PK, what a story there. I mean, PK's granddad was president of Barcelona, I'm pretty sure. And Fergie had got the coup of getting him at 17. His mum and dad came over. And Fergie says to Dave, right, he's going to come. The only thing is they want good accommodation and schooling. This transfer's now on your shoulders now, Dave. No pressure, like. And it all went through. Um, and then you come to Rashford, who was at United from the age of 6. Um, they brought Ravel Morrison,
Yeah.
Greenwood over from Bradford, Halifax 6, 7, 8. And, they've got this schooling and it just exploded from that. The one I liked was Matt Tominey, because Scott McTominay, of course, was born in Lancaster. He's English,
Yeah.
but he's a Scots father. And United were after him from the age of 11, and they brought him up to Ashton-on-Mersey School. And Dave did a deal with his mum because there was definitely homesickness, and his mother wasn't sure about letting an 11-year-old son. He'll be like this when Ruby gets to 11 and whatever. Oh no, no, I want to do this one. Um, and so what Dave said, I'll tell you what, look, you bring him for 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, let him stay at your house after he's played on a Saturday, Sunday at home. He does Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday's his day off. So you come up Wednesday, take him round Manchester, Thursday, Friday. He can even go on Friday night. You bring him back for the game on Saturday and take him home after. You know, to really bring him onto the United banner. And Scott McTominay now, Welbeck now, Rashford now. He bumped into Rashford at the Villa Youth Cup game in last March semi-final, and Rashford's all covered up like that. Come over today, big bear hug. Thanks for everything you did for me. You know, but you made the great point about Drew Harris um, in Brian Greenough's book, and it's the number of players who've got United's learning from the age of 6, 10, 15, who didn't quite make it at United. I mean, the other week, less than 2 months ago, he got a handwritten letter from Ethan Galbraith,
Yeah.
um, who sent him his Northern Ireland shirt, thanking him for all he'd done. And Dave said he'll be moving from Leighton Orient if they don't, and he's £1 million. I think he's at Swansea now. So it's them type of players and the background to that. But the really interesting part that Fergie started using Dave to go and scout players and go and scout them abroad.
Yeah.
And he said, I want you to go over to Clairefontaine, I think it's called, the French, because France under 16 are playing Belgium under 16, and I want you to have a look at a couple of players. And one of the players was Eden Hazard, who was at that time Belgium under 16s, but he was already in France playing for Lille.
Yeah.
And Dave had this sheet, A, B, C, D, yes, whatever, left foot, right foot. And on that, he showed me the sheet. He just went, psh, psh, put Ryan 2 lines through it and said, sign him, and gave it to Fergie. And Fergie flew over 3 or 4 times, private jet, to Lille to try and sign him. And in the end, the money of Abramovich, they paid more for him to go to Chelsea. But
Yeah.
Eden Hazard was that close to
Yeah.
joining United.
It just goes to show the value of which Fergie. I mean, you've heard those stories before about managers trusting the judgment of Jimmy Murphy. Just to say, just sign him without needing to watch him himself. Like and they,
Steve Coppell.
yeah, it was Gordon Hill. They invest the money with just the trust of the judgment, really, and that's the thing. And so, not just that. I mean, he stayed at the club. He's still around the club, right? He's still in the
Still
same
there.
capacity.
Yeah,
He's still doing
still
the same
there.
kind of role. Like 2 years ago, 2023, I was actually at the Premier League Academy conference. It was held
Oh,
at Old
yeah.
Trafford. where they recognised. Yeah, because I was working freelance with United, and we did because because it was being held at Old Trafford. We were making a video package, so it was basically a package to do with the club's academy, celebrating the history of the academy. And so, because of my work on that, I was invited. I was actually on the next table to Dave and Sir Alex. There's a couple of pictures of them at the event where I'm kind of photo bombing in the background with my big bald head. But it was really nice. Fergie did a speech talking about the importance of Dave there, and everyone in the room was connected to United. And it just goes to show that this coming not too long after United had won the Youth Cup as well, that the focus, obviously quite rightly, a lot of focus on Nick Cox, Steve Iam, who works alongside Nick, who people don't really hear his name publicly, but he'd been quite integral to that. But even these kind of people, they weren't standing there and getting the acclaim for themselves. Travis Binion as well. They were there to celebrate Dave, and everyone was sort of like so warm in their reception and applause for Dave. And I mean that must have been a proud moment for him to get recognised like that.
Yeah, and I mean, he definitely does not. I am. Never heard him, whatever. Seriously not. But the accolades that just come, and people, if you don't mind, Fergie insisted on doing the forward,
Yeah,
which, in the last paragraph, I'll just read it. And this is Fergie's words in the book. I look back and thank David Bushell for an amazing contribution to the success of Manchester United. His job was to bring the best young players to United, but more than that, he created an institution for young men to become top footballers and, just as important, good human beings. I mean, and that's only the last paragraph. He's been writing 10 paragraphs before that.
yeah,
So you don't get to have that esteem. You'll know Fergie, and you know you've got to be somehow in that circle because it's important when you're at his level. You've got to have the ultimate trust. I've
yeah,
got to know, right, Wayne's the man. Yeah, no, I've no even ifs and buts. Wayne, tell me about. I might disagree. No, I'm not going to do that. But let him have his say. But you,
yeah,
in turn, have got to be able to express yourself, even if you think, Alec, he needs. Well, I don't. I'm not sure. Well, I'm telling you now. You know, and if he turns him down, that's different.
yeah.
There was one interesting guy that's really surprising. I can never pronounce his name. I think it's Emery Cam. Is it Emery Cam or Emery Can who played for Liverpool and
Emre Can, yeah,
Chania? Well, Dave got sent to the. I didn't know there was a desert area in Turkey. Should have done. He got sent to this desert area in Turkey by Fergie to watch two Turkey versus Germany under 16 games, which were being played on a Monday and a Wednesday. And straight away in the first game, Emre Can was playing for, although he was Turkish descent, he was playing for Germany.
yeah,
And he was 6 foot, well built, 2-footed. And straight away, he just saw him playing alongside Pogba. Spoke to his dad, watched both games. He was the outstanding player on both sides. And they were talking to him and his father about him coming to United. And again, they were really keen on it. But of course, he didn't go there, and he finished up. I think he played for Dortmund, didn't he? And then he went to Liverpool, or the other way around, and all that. But easily he could have been another that would have come to United. The ones that slipped through the pack. I mean, there's a
yeah.
lovely story about Obi Mikel, but I couldn't put it in the book. It's how he didn't sign. Well, I think he did sign for United, but how he didn't play for United is a
Yeah.
story that wasn't worth putting in the book properly.
He was on his own podcast lately, wasn't he, talking about that? Yeah, I remember all that, the kidnap fiasco and everything. It was just crazy.
He was kidnapped from the Cresta Court Hotel, I believe. So allegedly.
Um, I'll put the information in the descriptions for this podcast, both audio and the video
Yeah.
to order the book. But I just want to close by talking about, first of all, Dave, I'm glad that you've taken the time to write this book. I mean, you, like I, time doesn't always allow. We are very fortunate, you and I, both as supporters. Me more fortunate than you in terms of, like, of you to call upon in terms of advice and everything. But in terms of the people that we're connected to and the people that we talk to on a daily basis, you hear so many stories like this, and there's so many people who you go like, "Oh, you could write a book, or we should write a book." And I know between you and I, we've given it a good go in terms of like covering as many people as we can. But there aren't all you can't always get around to doing all of it. So it's kind of like, where do you go down the line of making sure that whenever you do write something, it's like that person gets the acknowledgement for what they've done. So to be able to work with someone and tell their life story, Dave definitely deserves it. And kudos to you, Roy. Make sure if you're listening and watching this, do consider buying a book. Make sure that you're getting there and supporting this, because all the proceeds go to the Christie. And also for Roy's writing style, I know, yeah, it's not easy to write someone's life story. You've got to tell their voice and everything like that. But for Dave to have trusted Roy, I mean, we talk about the esteem in which Sir Alex holds Dave, but Dave's esteem within the circles of Manchester United, for him to have trusted Roy, also says a lot as well. And that's just me giving the praise to Roy, because he's not going to give it to himself there. But on a conversation that both you and I can talk about, you grow up, both of us growing up, I know we're different ages, about people younger than me as well. You grow up and you hear names, dig a little deeper. Obviously, there's Busby and Ferguson, the monoliths of Manchester United, and then you dig. Not everyone knows about Jimmy Murphy. Not everyone knows about Eric Harrison. Not everyone knows about Rennie Mullenstein. But you dig and you find out information about them, and you go, "Oh God, I didn't realize they contributed this. I didn't realize their contribution was so significant." And then you dig a little bit deeper, and you go, Walter Crickmore, Louis Rocker, James Gibson, John Henry Davies, and then you've got maybe even dig deeper than that, and there's an influential tier of men that are like Louis Rocker, and Crickmore are probably there as well. Joe Armstrong, Tony Whelan, Paul McGuinness, Bert Inglis, Jack Puller. Again, I'm just saying names that people might not even be familiar with at this point. Alf Albert, Frederick Attic, the man who founded the club. Names who aren't completely familiar. They might ring a bell, but they're so fundamental to the existence of the club, the running of the club, the way that the club operates, the way that the club maintains its identity. The club now is, well documented, 1,000 staff, which has been downsized to like 600 or whatever now. But it's so big considering what it used to be, where it was Louis Rocker bringing the people to the club, and then it was like Louis Rocker looking after them, and then Walter Crickmore looking after them, and then Joe Armstrong, after being scouted by the likes of Jack O'Brien or the different scouts around the regions and the nations, like Joe Armstrong looking after them, bringing them, making sure that they were looked after. But now you have this tier of all these scouts, all these different people, these entire scouting network departments at United. Dave's role within 30 years, even though, first of all, Dave being brought in is a reflective of the change and the sprawling nature, A, of the club, B, of the sport, C, of what player welfare as well. But for him to have held that role for as long as he has, since 95, considering the growth, like we've said, of academies, of scouting networks, tells you everything you need to know. And this isn't about Dave particular, but people like Dave, right? So we're talking maybe 4 or 5 tiers away from Ferguson, but that's how crucial that knitted network goes to maintaining the integrity of the club. And you know as well as I do, you've been around Carrington, you've talked to the likes of Nick Cox, all these people, you know how important someone like Dave is. And it does go down, it seeps down to that level, doesn't it? People like Dave are so important for the identity of football, of Manchester United Football Club at this moment, considering that there's been so many employees taken away from what the club are. People like Dave are so representative and so important to what the club stands for.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw in my own business life as well, because I used to work as well for a major construction company. But I always believe, for example, in any company, one of the most important people is the person who answers the telephone. Because if that person doesn't answer, you ring up and you want a school building, and you ring up, brr, 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 put it down, I'll ring somebody else. The people whose role wouldn't be taken as, but in effect, that person could be as important as the chief executive in a way, because he or she hasn't answered that phone and someone else has gone somewhere else. Um, so yeah, there are all these people, and you've mentioned so many there. I mean, excuse my ignorance, but I'm not sure anyone's. I'm not going to do it, but I'm not sure anyone's ever done a book on Louis Rocker, for example. I don't think they have. They may be, but I've not heard. Walter Crickmore definitely hasn't had one done. And you get someone like Walter Crickmore, who joined United in 1919 in the accounts. By 1945, he'd had times where he'd been um, caretaker manager of Manchester United, had found James Gibson when the club would bust in 1932 or 33, uh, and was there with Rocker, finding that Matt Busby might be interested in managing Manchester United. Now, whoa. And Walter Crickmore, of course, sadly got killed in the Munich air crash. He was like the ticket office when it was all manual. And I don't know if he had an assistant. Seriously, I don't know if he had an assistant because obviously, mainly, all ticket would mainly have been the seats. There wasn't many 60,000 all ticket games. But the man was vital to the club. And Rocker just did everything. You mentioned the dog with Davis, the
Yeah.
chairman, the original chairman. I mean, and he was the one who actually got in touch with Busby, asking him would he be interested. When he came up to be Manchester United manager and set it all up. So there's all them, and then Joe Armstrong took over from Louis Rocker, I think, who died when United were in their first tour of America in 1950. He died, and I think Joe Armstrong. I mean, Joe Armstrong, what was he, 5'1"? But anybody who ever met Joe Armstrong will have not forgot Joe Armstrong. And of course, uh, the one man I remember of the Busby Babes, because I used to do after dinner speaking and or hosting, and I'd meet people. I knew Jackie Blanchflower very well, for example, and they all spoke about Tom Curry, who was
Yeah.
the trainer, who had
Yeah.
a white overall on, and they called him Tosh Curry. And Tosh Curry had been a good footballer for Newcastle in the 20s and everything. He come to United way before Busby, in the 30s. And Jackie Blanchard said him and Tommy Taylor used to play terrible tricks on him. He said he took it in good out, but he was a man. He'd always have something available for him.
Yeah.
And these type of people are absolutely vital. And Dave Bushell has been at the head of a lot of that regime, along with his great friend Tony Whelan. Uh, which is you just when you read the book, hopefully, and you'll see the esteem that these players and how he's nurtured and brought them up. And people, he says about managers. Now you've got Wellens, who's a manager, whose son's playing for him at Leighton Orient. You've got all of this lot. Paul Heckingbottom. Um, and I can't praise him enough. He's a fantastic guy to know, and it's been an honour and a pleasure to do the book. And both his wife and my wife have had issues that involve the Christie, and the book's on Amazon, and Dave's wanted any profit of it to go to the Christie. Um, but hopefully it's a good read as well. And thank you for today. And may
Uh,
I say, and I know you tell me to go away and perhaps even cut it, but the art of writing, I mean, my writing's evolved over when I wrote in the program 40 years ago. And I used to just write A goes to B, place C, whatever. but you've got to learn to expand those sentences. Uh, and it's something I'm still trying to do at 78 years of age. But, turning a 50,000 word book into, I don't know, 80, 100,000
Yeah.
word, that takes some skill. And it's a lot of Saturday morning came around, the rain in the air. Well, you've got the description and get
Yep.
to the story. And I admire your writing, what you've done. It's special.
Oh, thank you, Roy. But let's not turn this into a big
No, no.
thanking session. But I do want to say first of all, thank you for writing this book. I mean, to take the time to work with Dave, because the one thing is that you do have a lot of these people as well who do want to tell their stories. Sometimes it's just not possible with timing to be able to do that. I mean, you will know we've had to turn people down in the past when they've said, "I really want to tell a story." You just don't have the time to do it. You've got the inclination, you really want to do it, but it just doesn't work out that you can't do it. And then for whatever reason, maybe time moves on, maybe they lose interest in doing it, maybe they just don't want to do it anymore. Maybe they found someone else to do it, which is great as well. But that opportunity to not be able to do it, but Dave definitely found the right person in you, and I urge everyone to. I will definitely be reading it, and I urge everyone to do that. And like I said, these kind of books that talk about the soul of what Manchester United are. I love writing biographies of players. I love all those stories. I like telling stories at the time. But everything like this complements that so well because it tells about the actual fabric of what the club is and what it represents and what it actually takes to represent United on a day-to-day basis. You need records like this for the future generations to understand all the building blocks, all the people who were there at the time. These are like the manuals. These are the values and morals and the guidance and the kind of the way that they represented the club. And that's just as important as the players. Because if you don't have all that, the extra stuff, which is like, this is how we guided the players, these are the structures, this is the infrastructure, all of this is the way that we did it, these are the things that we looked for. Um, and these are the things that I stood for. And these are it's not just Manchester United's morals and Manchester United's code of ethics and Man United's way of doing things. It's also the way that the individuals' attributes and their personality and the things that they stood for aligned with that. So the likes of Tony Whelan, who I know so well, and Tony might even listen to this and give me a call on the blower to tell me off for speaking so highly of him. But he'll know what I'm saying with Dave. All of these kind of people, they stand for something that means so much. So, like people who are listening to this and watching this is very important for United history, these kind of records. So this is why I'm saying thanks to Roy for writing it. And thanks to Dave for taking the time to tell it and picking the right person to do so, because, and also the worthy cause for which it's going to. I can't speak highly enough of that. So really do recommend you go in and do that. And obviously, thanks to Roy. If you've enjoyed the podcast, you might go back and listen to some of the earlier pods I've done with Roy. In the past, we talked with David Blatt about Matt Busby when I was shelling my book, Matt Busby, Football Talk by Matt Busby, earlier in the year. So that's on the channel and on the podcast as well. If you've enjoyed the video, if you can give it a like and subscribe, and more than sharing the podcast, share David book, get that out there, get it out there for the cause that it's supporting as well, but also for yourself to get a good read. I'll be back on Wednesday with Tony and Mike to preview the Manchester City game, which we're all looking forward to. Thanks for your time, Roy. Really appreciate it. Like I said, get a copy of Dave's book. Yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Roy for his time.